respected dignitaries and dear delegate friends. First of all, I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to the organizers for having given this opportunity to address you and to express my experience and feelings of this separation of powers, especially between executive and the legislature. See, it's the right time we are discussing about the separation of powers, especially that of executive, judiciary and legislature. As Sri Bhupendra Yadav has rightly told, that in day-to-day life we are experiencing that even the last experience which we have seen regarding the national anthem, the Supreme Court verdict is also very clear that judicial legislation by the judiciary. So what is meant by the separation of powers which is enunciated in the Constitution of India? And the separation of powers, the debate has started since long, that is from the 18th century onwards this discussion has started. And the basic principle by which the separation of powers is that power corrupts and absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. That is the basic principle by which the separation of powers has been debated throughout these centuries. And the Constituent Assembly of India has also discussed a lot about the separation of powers, but so far the Constituent Assembly or the subsequent amendments to the Constitution had never given an explicit provision in the Constitution, and no constitutional status has been given to the Constitution of India regarding the separation of powers. So that is a very interesting aspect to be noted. Though there is no specific explicit provision as far as the separation of powers is there, still the Indian Constitution, there is an inbuilt provisions in the Constitution. Separation of powers is one of the basic features of our Constitution. That is a very interesting fact to be noted. That if you see the separation of powers, only one article, that is Article 50, there is also a separation of judiciary and the executive. There is no mention about the separation of executive from the legislature or separation of executive from the, legislature from the judiciary. That Article 50, the directive principles of state policy, is also only giving a direction to the government that so as to ensure the separation of executive from the judiciary. So when we think about it, we know that the Indian Constitution, the three organs are given ample powers, privileges and immunities have been given to all these three organs of the government. And at the same time, there are a lot of combinations of powers because the legislature and the executive has very good relationship and it is totally interconnected. If you go through, the executive wing and the legislative wing are closely connected in almost all the aspects of the administration of the country. Therefore, the executive is directly responsible to the House of the People or the Parliament or the legislature because the people is the supreme as per the Constitution of India. And I would like to suggest that there is no rigid rule of separation of powers in the Constitution, but at the same time, it is embedded in the Constitution. The separation of the principle of or the doctrine of separation of powers is embedded in the Constitution of India. In powers in Indian Constitution or in Indian context, definitely we have to refer that case, Kesavananda Bharati's case. That is the amending power of the Parliament is under Article 368 of the Constitution, by which in the Kesavananda Bharati's case, the Supreme Court has very specifically stated and observed that the basic features of the Constitution shall not be disturbed at the time of amending the Constitution. So the amending power of the Parliament under Article 368 is subject to the basic structure of the Constitution or the basic features of the Constitution. In that case, it is held that the Honorable Supreme Court has held that separation of powers is also one of the basic features of our Indian Constitution. Though there is no provision, there is no specific or explicit provision in the Constitution regarding the separation of powers, The Supreme Court has upheld the principle that the separation of principle is one of the ingredient, essential, basic characteristic or feature of our constitution that is there. And I would like to quote the quoting of Justice Frankfurter, that is quote, enforcement of a rigid conception of separation of powers would make the modern government impossible. Full stop. Strict separation of powers is a theoretical absurdity and practical impossibility, unquote. That is the observation made by him, the learned justice. That is, practically it is impossible to have a strict separation of powers between the executive and the legislature. And theoretical absurdity, he has stated that it is a theoretical absurdity and practical impossibility. Why? Because I would like to cite one example regarding the legislature and the executive, because the executive, that means the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers headed by the President of India, who is the head of the executive of the country. But that is being elected by the Parliament, or they are also part and parcel of the legislature. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers are part and parcel of the legislature, and they are heading the executive also. The strict sense of separation of powers or strict sense of separation is impossible as far as the Indian Constitution is concerned. But as far as the US Constitution, it is very clear that the bureaucracy, the political bureaucracy, is entirely different from that of the other. There, it is the secretaries or the ministers, the secretaries not being appointed by the Parliament. It is that is strict sense of or rigid sense of separation of powers is there in the American Constitution and in France and so many other countries. And similarly, another close connected activity, that is the President of India, in which the executive authority is being vested with the President of India as the head of the executive, and he exercised the lawmaking powers under Article 1, 2, 3 of the Constitution, which in the opening remarks has also said, and Mr. Mubedri was also talked about the ordinance making provision. And there the executive is acting as the lawmaking body or the legislature. But at the same time, I would like to say, though the ordinance has been promulgated by the President of India or by the executive, that has to be ratified and approved by the Parliament. So who is the Supreme? There we can very well again say that the Parliament is the Supreme, because immediately after the convening of the next session of the Parliament, definitely this ordinance has to be placed before the House, and we are having the right to annul the ordinance, or we have the right to disapprove the ordinance. Ordinance making power is absolutely within the authority of the President of India. When the session is not there, some extraordinary situation prevails and the government is not able to wait till the session is being summoned, then they are having the provision, power under Article 123 to promulgate an ordinance. But that ordinance, the fate of the ordinance also depends on the legislature or depends on the Parliament. There also, this connection of powers or this connectivity between the executive and the legislature is still there. So then what is the Indian perspective of the separation of powers as far as executive, legislature and judiciary? We can conclude that this Indian perspective of separation of power as per our constitution is the harmonious balancing of power between various organs of the government. A harmonious relationship is being built between various organs, and all these three organs are supreme in their own spheres, but all these three organs are subject to the provisions of the Constitution, because the Constitution is the supreme authority in our country, in the democratic system or the parliamentary system of democracy in our country. And coming to the Parliament, the issue which we are discussing, in the case of Parliament, we know there are a lot of functions, but the prime and the most important function of the Parliament is the lawmaking, no doubt about it. It is the supreme legislative body at the national level. And if you see the preamble of the Constitution of India, we the people, the Constitution starts with the words, the preamble starts with the words, we the people of India. So who is the supreme? It is not the Parliament, it is not the judiciary, it is not the executive, but the people of the country is the supreme as far as the Constitution of India is concerned. And who represents the people of India? I think, according to me, it is the Parliament or the legislature represents the people of India. Parliament is the will of the people. And the authority being vested with the people of India, that means the supreme authority is the people of India. And the Parliament represents the people of India, that represents the will of the people. So therefore, the parliament or the executive is directly responsible to the Parliament of India or directly responsible to the people of India through the parliament or through the legislature. That is a harmonious relationship between the executive and the legislature. The executive is accountable to the people of India. The executive is responsible to the people of India through which mechanism? That is the parliament or the legislature. See, when we discuss about the functions of the parliament, the first one that I have already stated, that the prime function of the parliament or the legislature is to the lawmaking. And there also you may kindly see who drafts the law. The law is being drafted by the executive, the government or the executive draft the law. The draft bill is being approved by the Council of Ministers, and the draft bill being placed before the parliament for approval by the or passing of by the parliament. There also the functions are interrelated and the functions are connected, but the appropriate and the supreme authority is the parliament to pass the bill. So lawmaking. And number two, financial control. That is the typical subject which we are actually discussing, that the parliament controls over government. Expenditure is an essential feature of an accountable and responsible administration. In order to have an accountable and responsible administration in a democratic system, the parliament's control is absolutely necessary and required. And how the parliament can have the control over the executive, and what are the mechanisms by which we can have the supervisory, not supervisory control, a scrutiny of the functions of the executive, that is the point which we have to discuss. See, regarding the financial powers, number two, legislative functions, then comes to the financial functions of the financial powers. See, in order to raise and spend, if you want to raise the money and spend the money, parliament's approval is required. Suppose, as far as the legislation is concerned, the bill is being drafted by the executive and presented before the parliament for approval. And same case, as far as the demands for grants as well as the tax proposals, these are the two major financial functions, budget. The new tax proposals as well as the demands of grants are emanates from the executive, but it is subject to the approval of the parliament. And the Constitution of India, there are three main provisions. I am not going to quote all these provisions because of the paucity of the time. And the three major provisions are that no tax can be levied or collected without the sanction of the parliament. And second provision is the executive have no authority to each and every single pie if the executive has to spend. You have to obtain the sanction or permission from the parliament. So how supreme is the parliament in that sphere? And the third provision is the executive cannot spend the money according to the whim and fancy of the executive, but that can be spent only through the manner prescribed by the parliament through a law. So the money can be spent only on the basis of an authority of law, not only by means of an authority of law, and also through the procedure established by the parliament or the procedure prescribed by the parliament. So parliamentary scrutiny and the parliamentary control over the executive is being well established in the Constitution of India, so that the whim and fancy or the will of the people is protected. That is the first and foremost duty of the legislature or the parliament. And this is based on the principle that no tax without representation. No taxation without representation. That is the basic principles by which the financial control over the executive by the parliament is being well established and being experienced. And coming to the third point, regarding the parliamentary control over the other functions other than the legislative lawmaking and all that, and what are the means by which we can exercise the control. I'm not going to explain all this, the question hour. According to me, this is the best opportunity as far as a member of parliament is concerned to grill the government and corner the government, and to make the government answerable to the people through the question hour. Now we know that the Right to Information Act, every other tools are applicable to the common people also. Therefore, the significance of the question hour is little bit lost. Even then, this is the right opportunity so that the government can be made accountable to the people through the question hour. And also the members will get an opportunity to get some assurances from the government in the floor of the House, so that the assurances, the government is bound to comply with the assurances. That is the best means of a parliamentarian to get an assurance from the government and also to question the government and corner and even grill the government, that is through question hour. Then so many other means of discussion, half an hour discussion, calling attention motion, short duration discussion, and adjournment motion. Now we are trying to get an adjournment motion in the parliament, all these days regarding the demonetization process, because adjournment motion, and people are asking to the opposition, why you are simply demanding for a discussion with voting? Yes, it is having its own significance. A discussion under Rule 193 is just only a debate or a discussion, nothing will happen. But in the case of other adjournment motion or a motion under Rule 184 of the procedure, or even 342 of the rules of procedure and conduct of business in the Lok Sabha, we will be getting an opportunity to see that which party support and which party oppose. Division is the basis of democracy. Majority, rule of majority is the basic principle of democracy. Then why government is hesitating to have a discussion with voting? That is a question which the opposition is raising. So adjournment motion and other motions which having a voting means clear division will come in the house, so that the people can understand who stands for whom and what the position of each and every party takes in respect of each and every policy of the government. And further, the best weapon in the hands of parliament to control the government is the no confidence motion. It is the strongest weapon in the hands of the executive, that is the no confidence motion also. And another point, the fourth one, is regarding how the parliament can scrutinize the functions of the executive, that is through committee system. That is a very important system which was developed in the parliamentary system of India during the years of the 80s and 90s. The parliamentary department-related parliamentary standing committees to scrutinize the demands of grants, the functioning of the government. Even so many recommendations can be made by the department-related standing committees, and also regarding the Public Accounts Committee and the Estimates Committee. That is the accounts and audit, even the audit and audit para can be made, observations and objections can be made regarding the accounts of the government. So it's a parliamentary control over the finance of the government is well established by the committee system, by the Public Accounts Committee, Estimates Committee, Public Sector Undertakings Committee, as well as the department-related standing committee, by which each and every proposal, demands of grants are being well scrutinized. The micro-level scrutiny is being made by the parliamentary standing committees, so that the executive is again becoming more and more accountable to the parliament and to the legislature. That is also there. And coming to the third part, that is that the executive, see, we know that the executive is responsible. Yes, executive is responsible for implementing all the laws made by the parliament, and also the executive is having the authority and the responsibility to make the judicial orders to be implemented, and the policy formulation and the maintenance of law and order and administrative matters, and they are even having the judicial powers in some certain cases, and diplomatic functions, military functions, and also this lawmaking power. When we come to the ordinance making provision, the lawmaking provision is also there. So the executive, my point is, as the point which the most respected moderator as well as the opening remarks, it is being said, I am the lone member in parliament. I am only one member in the parliament from my party, RSP. But I could get several opportunities in the house to not only to deliberate, but corner the government even in so many instances. It is not depending on the number of members, but depend on the member who do the work, how he does the work. That is the main point to be discussed. Pardon? The capacity of them, I don't say, because since
you're doing very well, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
So my point is, I can during the question answer, I can very well establish it. So definitely, it's a very, very good tool in the hands of the member. The parliamentary system of democracy is the best form of democracy. So then the activities, the functions, commissions and omissions of the executive can be well controlled, and the will of the people can be protected if there is an effective, intelligent parliamentary system, efficient parliamentary system is there in our country. Unfortunately, these opportunities are not being availed. Only the parliament is concerned about the current political issues than the basic issues of the parliament. With these words, I conclude for the time being. Thank you very much.